I invite questions as we're talking through today. Feel free to drop those into the questions window. I try to monitor those while we're talking through the presentation. Also, as a reminder, these webinars are always recorded. So you can certainly feel free after this webinar to pass it around to other people. Get the YouTube link from us. That'll be sent out after this is uploaded to YouTube probably tomorrow. And also at the end of these webinars, we always appreciate your feedback. That helps us to improve these webinars, help us to pick out some new topics for you, and make sure that you're getting the best value out of these webinars that we're hosting for you. So with that, let's jump into today's webinar and start talking about the actual workflows here. So as always, I like to start out talking about what some of the issues are. So a lot of my clients have some design criteria that happens to exist in Excel. The desire is that you want to validate this design somehow against the actual model. And there's ways of doing this. In the back in the day, we used to do this all manually. We'd extract information from polylines, say in an AutoCAD file, to get some areas and plug that into spreadsheets, or do manual counts from a sheet of paper and put that into a spreadsheet that had some original design criteria in it. And then sometimes we'd want to take that information and present the result of those back in our Revit construction documents. That's where our schedule or our schedule Excel tool is going to come into play. But in Revit, there's not really a really good way to do that. Revit has no method to achieve either of those two desires, to automatically take information out and validate it against some design criteria. Well, it's not necessarily true. I could probably do it using some schedules and using some schedule keys maybe in Revit, but it's not a super streamlined process, and usually the people who have that information aren't in Revit when they're authoring that data, so it'd be duplicating information again, and I'm not really for that. I like to try to keep the information in as few places as possible and take the human error of data entry out of the equation if at all possible. And sometimes, again, we want to present that information back in Revit, but Revit doesn't really have a way of taking a lot of that data that's usually authored in Excel and presenting it inside of Revit directly. So today what we're going to do is talk about the solutions and how we're going to make this function. So using Spreadsheet Link, what I'm going to do is take information that exists in Revit, I'm going to export that data out. I'm going to make this process repeatable by using saved settings. In fact, I'm going to use some advanced saved settings so I can actually start with a spreadsheet. In fact, today's spreadsheet was given to me by a client, and I've kind of interpreted through how I think they want to implement this in their firm. I think they're on the line today kind of watching the presentation. They might get some ideas of how this is working out. So thank you to you who have provided this spreadsheet to me. You'll know who you are when you see it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Schedule Excel, and I'm going to take some of this formatted information that is going to exist in Excel, this result of my program, of my design validation, and I'm going to link that back into Revit, and I'm going to maintain as much of the Excel formatting as I possibly can. Now, there's a little bit of a limitation that exists in Revit that makes it so I can't completely maintain all the Excel formatting, but I'm going to try to maintain the vast majority of it, if at all possible. Also today, I'm going to try and show you a lot of that behind-the-scenes magic again of what I did to set this up in the first place, so you have a pretty good idea of how you could recreate something like this for yourself using some of your design validation spreadsheets. So let's talk about what the workflow is going to actually look like. I'm going to use Spreadsheet Link, and I'm going to use a file from Microsoft Excel. First of all, I'm going to establish whatever data it is I need for my data extraction. I'm going to use a base file from Excel. That's, again, the one provided by my client. I'm going to configure my export. So I'm going to get all that data exported. I'm going to save it out to Excel. I'm going to finish creating some of my data associations, and then I'm going to do some advanced settings to make it so that this process is truly repeatable. So I can make it so that end users don't have to keep recreating everything that I've done, that it can be mostly automatic. There's a little bit of babysitting on each project depending on how this is going to be set up, but it's certainly possible to do. All right. After I've done all of that and I've actually created a repeatable workflow, I'm going to take that resulting spreadsheet and I'm going to link it right back in. I'm going to establish kind of how I want this information to flow, where I want it to be saved, coordinate some of that where I want it to be saved with the Spreadsheet Link tool with its automatic save options. I want to create that link with Schedule Excel, and I want to possibly update that link with Schedule Excel as future design changes actually happen. All right. Let's jump into Revit and actually take a look at how this is going to work. So pull up Revit here in the background. I have to finish opening up my file apparently because it's not fully opened yet. So just getting this open, what I'm also going to do is open up a spreadsheet that's going to kind of support this file a little bit. So let me go into Windows Explorer here and pull up a spreadsheet. Now this is a spreadsheet as it was given to me by my client. I'm going to pull this up right now in Excel. So here I've got this this single level kind of summary here of how many workstations I've got in my model. And the intent here, I believe, is to size these workstations approximately to these square footage sizes. So I've done that already in my Revit model. What I'm using actually is areas for this exercise. And I'm going to place a number of them around my model. And I've got kind of a garbage model that I've put together here for today's purposes, and I can drop in as many of these as I want. My goal here is for the quantity on plan portion, I want to automatically extract this based on whatever the individual workstation is I'm dealing with, whether it's a little hoteling station, a small little stand-up station, or possibly some other more refined type stations that are either temporary, small, or more permanent office type spaces. So I want to get a quantity of how many of them I have in my project. I also want to know how many have been put into my program. What is the client expecting for the quantity of those spaces? And then I want to know how I'm actually lining up with that, what my variance happens to be. So this particular spreadsheet was, again, the one provided by my client. They formatted this. Now down below, there's also some other types of supporting spaces. These are not necessarily workstations. These are actual square footages on rooms, I believe. So what I'm going to do on the top portion is extract a quantity of how many spaces or how many workstations I have. On the bottom down here, I'm going to extract actual physical square footages, total square footages of individual space types down here. So my program is going to list out what the total square footage of, how much square footage of conference rooms should I have. And then I'm going to take and pull that square footage quantity from my file and see what my variance is on that as well. So we're going to do both in a single spreadsheet from a single Revit export. Now you can obviously combine this data together however you'd like. You can pull whatever information you can extract from your Revit model. This is just the method that I'm going to use today. I'm going to quantify how many of objects. I'm also going to quantify total square footage of objects based on different types of spaces here. So to achieve this, the first thing I'm going to do is open up Schedule Excel, and I'm going to open up this particular spreadsheet, and I'm going to start an export of areas, because both of these things that I'm going to be working with today are going to be based on areas in my file. That is the area object defined by area boundary lines and defined by an actual area placed inside of those boundary lines. I've created some groups for my workstation so I can just have some typical blocks I can drop around the place. And I've created some other areas out there in a different area type plan that I'm going to be using for the kind of more free-formed areas. But ultimately, they're just area objects is what they are. So let me pull this spreadsheet off to the side. I'm going to throw it on a different monitor for now. And in this particular project here, let me take you through what I've created. Please don't grade my plan. It's just a garbage plan I threw together really quickly for today's presentation. What I have here is 2 different area plan types. So I created this, by the way, by going to Room and Area, Area and Volume Computations, and I created 2 area schemes. I created a support space plan. That particular plan is the information that's going to be used by the square footage down here on the bottom. And the second one that I created was a workstation plan. It's a different area plan, and it's very intentional. I created it differently. That's what's going to be used right here in my staffing summary for my quantities. Again, because they're areas, I can extract them all out to a single tab, and that's going to be my intent here. So those are my 2 different area schemes that I'm going to be working with today. I've already created the floor plans for this. So here underneath my support space plan on my level 1, what I happen to have is a bunch of areas dropped out here, and I've got some names that have been placed inside these different areas. Now, if you look carefully here, these names happen to match up very carefully with the different types of names I've got out here. So I've got like conference spaces, media medium, or media small, or large, or whatever type of spaces those happen to be. In this case, conference medium, right down here. Now I'm doing that with the schedule key inside of Revit. I've created a support space key schedule. My key is being used on the individual spaces themselves. Right here, I am using my area type key. No, sorry, wrong one. I'm using the, where'd it go here? Area description right here. My area description is what I'm using. As I change this, and I have a preset list of what area descriptions I can use that matches up with my spreadsheet, that is going to drive what the actual name of the space or the area happens to be. And this is the value that I'm going to be using in my spreadsheet extraction, is the name of the area consistently for both processes. And I also then, of course, have an actual square footage value inside here as well. That's being derived from whatever I've dropped this area into in my plan. So I've got some that are unnamed; they're just called area. I can refine those later on and make different choices. We'll see how that potentially can work. I've got a huge lobby down here. I wasn't really checking scale of this building as I was throwing it together. I've got a huge lobby down here. I've got a reception area, some workforce management, and again, all of those types of areas are all going to associate with these different support space summaries down here. So I've got things like lobby, like workforce management, right? I've got those different types of areas down here, and I'm using this again to extract these square footages on this lower portion and total those up. Now on my other plan here, I've got a workstation plan. What I've done is I've created some groups out here. If I'm looking at these groups, if I can go over here to my model groups, I've got like a workstation group, or I've got like an Office 2 type group, and those line up with some of the offices that are appearing over, or those different staffing summaries from my spreadsheet. So each of these individual groups here, they line up and they have a space inside of them that's named the same as the individual staffing summary spaces here for the different workstations. They have some boundary lines pre-included inside of them. So I could simply take like this hoteling station right here and drag and drop this into my project, drop it out there. What it does is actually creates the space itself. You can see an area inside of there. It creates the boundary lines. It has a default size to it. I've also associated a group to this so I could have a tag pre-placed on that so I can see this is a hotel station at approximately 21 square feet. So it kind of matches up with what's in that spreadsheet. That was my intent, is to make this as streamlined and smooth as possible for an end user to be able to go out there and start bubble diagramming out or dropping out different specific workstations. These ones, I don't care what the square footage is. What I care about is how many of them I have in my project. So if I was to take and drop out, say, an executive admin workstation out here, it's got a slightly different size. If I was to take, say, the office space number 2 right here and drop this out here randomly wherever I want, it has its own size and apparently a rotation as well, because I rotated it out there to match up with my building. So if I wanted to rotate this right now, kind of bring it back to square, take that and just kind of rotate it to square, right? So I can do whatever I want with this. I can put these wherever I want, rotate them, get them placed. They all have, once again, different attached groups associated to them. My goal here is ultimately to get a count of how many Office 2s or offices or whatever I actually have. Let's begin this extraction process now that I've taken you through kind of what I have out here. Now, some of these aren't labeled. I did that on purpose so you wouldn't be able to tell what they are. We're going to let Spreadsheet Link take and do all that totaling for us. So if I go over here to my Revit Express tools, my first step here is going to be to open up Spreadsheet Link. In Spreadsheet Link, my second step is I'm going to open up a spreadsheet that already has been configured. So what I'm going to do is take that particular spreadsheet, and I'm going to do a quick save as on it. So I'm going to take this UHG spreadsheet. I'm going to save this directly, not save, save as to my folder system out here. I'm going to go to, where did I put this? Desktop. It's in my workflows folder here, and I happen to have a folder set up for Spreadsheet Link that is called Planning Summary. Now I've already got a Planning Summary template sitting out here. I'm going to steal this name and call it Planning Summary Template 2. We're going to come back and use this template in a minute to show you my automated workflow, since I probably won't get through the full configuration today for all the things that I want to do, but I'll show you what the ultimate result of this happens to be if we don't get through it all. I'm going to go ahead and save this particular spreadsheet as template 2. I'm going to shut down my spreadsheet now, and over here I'm going to open it up inside of Spreadsheet Link. So let's go back to the workflows, Spreadsheet Link, Planning Summary, and I'm going to open up my template 2 here. Get that opened. So what this is going to do is show me the 2 different individual tabs that already existed inside of there. And what I'm going to now do is begin my areas export. So here's my areas. I'm going to take that and export them out, create a tab for them right away. And there's a couple of values on these areas that I want. I want the area scheme name. That's going to tell me if it's a support space or if it is a workstation, because I'm going to use different ones on these areas. I'm going to use the workstations on the top half up here. I'm going to use the support spaces down here on the bottom. So I want to be able to quantify which one it is I'm actually working with. That's why I'm pulling the area scheme name in. Then what I'm going to care about is the actual name of the area itself. So whether it's a lobby or reception or whatever, or down here in the workstation plans, which type of workstation it happens to be. And then I also care about the square footage in the case of the support spaces up on top here. So I can actually extract the square footage values as well if I want those. Now when I'm dealing with the square footages, I do not want the SF suffix on it because I want just the value, just the number that's out there. So I'm going to hide the unit symbols. What that should let me do is actually get the areas, but not actually show me the square footage values. Now, before I go too much further, what I'm going to do is save my settings using an advanced save. I'm just going to establish my settings file right now. So let's do an advanced save here. That pulls up this little window. I'm going to specify which template it is I want to open. So when I first pulled up Spreadsheet Link, my first step was to open up a spreadsheet. So what I want to do is, now that I've got that opened, is I'm going to go ahead and browse and open up that same one, template number 2 here, get that opened. I'm going to save my settings specifically to a file, but also part of this process, if I was to run this using Spreadsheet Link Express, I would want to overwrite whatever spreadsheet it is I'm saving out so I can have a consistent spreadsheet per project. And what this will do, this has a specific naming convention. It uses the file name and it uses the settings file name as a part of the naming convention when it saves out this spreadsheet. And I can choose where I want it to go. So where I'm going to put this is, again, out here inside of, where'd it go here? My computer, D drive, my sample folder here, my Revit Express Tools workflows folder. I've got Spreadsheet Link, I've got my planning summary, and I have my planning results. This is where I'm going to be saving my spreadsheets. Now, right now, my planning results folder is completely empty. I'll show you that in a minute here. But when I save, actually, that's where I'm saving, yeah, the file itself. That's good. That's the resulting Excel file when I'm done with this workflow is where that's going to get saved, is in my planning results. I'm going to be taking this and call this out as planning results SLE2 to kind of match up with my other file name out there. So I've saved my settings file, at least I've started to. Now just to test this process out real quick, what I'm going to do is close my Spreadsheet Link settings. Wants to know if I want to save it before closing. I'm going to answer no because I've already done it, but I'm just going to close this down and I'm going to fire up Spreadsheet Link and load my settings just to make sure everything loads in as it's supposed to. So if a user was to work through this workflow, I want to make sure it loads up the spreadsheet first, it extracts my areas second, adding it to that list, and then it's going to go through the exercise of changing my units, and then I can do the rest of my lookup once I know that this is working. So load settings from file, grab my Spreadsheet Link Express settings number 2 right here. It's going to go ahead and extract my areas. Apparently, not having my unit symbols is causing my areas. Nope, it's not freaking out. It's just putting it over there on the right side because now it's an integer or it's a number. So it's putting it on the right side there. I was just making sure that it did extract that area. So everything's working out. At this point, what I can do is go back to Excel and I can start writing lookups based on this. So I'm going to save this spreadsheet out one more time as my template 2. Because I want to make sure I've already got an areas tab. I want to make sure that I've already got all my fields pre-figured out where they're going to be in my template so that my other tabs can look up from those in a consistent way. So I'm going to go ahead and save that out right now. While this is happening, I'm going to take a look at my questions window here. I see that I have a couple questions popping up. One of the questions is, can I populate the supporting space key schedule using Spreadsheet Link? And the answer right now is unfortunately not. I can't edit key schedules. I can see them and I can look information up from them. But with Spreadsheet Link right now, I can't add things to a key schedule. Working on that, it's a feature that's in the request list. If you want to add your voice to that, please go ahead and do that. As always, if you go to the Schedule Excel dropdown or any one of our tools, you can go to, not there, it's on the actual main tool here, Request Feature, and one of those would be to be able to edit and author key schedules from Spreadsheet Link. That'll just kind of put it higher up on the priority list. I understand that some of you may be having a little bit of an issue with some of the video coming through. I apologize. Hopefully that's clearing itself up here pretty quick. As always, if I'm pushing a lot of data and moving my mouse around too quickly, sometimes my window will drop its speed of connection a little bit there, or sometimes lose connection almost altogether. Hopefully it comes back quickly for you. Okay, I am back here in the Excel window now. This is the resulting saved template 2. I have some of my information from Revit pulled out here to my Areas tab. I'm going to go over to my Support Summaries single area over here and start doing a little bit of lookups from my Areas tab. Now, my lookups today are actually fairly simple. I'm going to be looking up whether or not it's a support space or a workstation space, what the name of it happens to be to make sure that it matches up with the appropriate row inside my previous tab over there. And if it's one of my support spaces, I want to get a total area on that. So that's what my goal is going to be here, is to do that today. I'm going to teach you a really cool trick that I learned the other day on how to use a feature inside of Revit to basically either give me a count or a total quantity of something based on a formula here. So before I go too far down this direction here, well, I guess I'll do it right here, and I'll kind of explain it as I'm going through it. So for the quantity on plan, this is what I'm trying to total up from this Areas tab over here. So the first thing that I want to do is make sure that this is a workstation type group. So I'm going to put a little formula here, and I'm going to do a special kind of formula called sum product. Sum product. Now, sum product is really cool. Whatever I'm putting inside of here, I put in as many conditions as I want, and for each condition I give it, it will return either a 1 or a 0 or an absolute value from a cell. It will multiply them all together, and then it'll proceed on to the next row, and it'll continue to add row by row by row whatever the product was of each row. You go, wait a minute, what? What are you talking about? Well, let me show you. There's a special feature in in Excel that I just learned the other day. This one was really cool. When I'm putting a condition in here, if I want to get back just a true or a false, it either equals something or it doesn't equal something, what I can do is put in dash dash, open parenthesis, and I can give it a condition. So I can say, for example, the Areas tab over here in the whole entire column C equals the value of each individual row equals, let's do a workstation plan. Okay, so if it, and it is case sensitive, by the way, that's very important. So if it equals workstation plan, in this case, because of how I wrote this out, this dash dash Areas equals workstation plan returns either a 1 or a 0. A true or a false, basically, is what it's going to return to me. So what I'm going to do is look up, first of all, and find out if the row is a workstation plan row. If it is, if it's a 1, it'll continue to do some of my math for me, and I'll explain what the actual math is going to look like here in a minute. Then what I'm going to do is another one here. I'm going to do dash dash again, so I'm going to get a 1 or a 0. And I'm going to open parenthesis here and ask it if the column C right here, Areas, not column C, column D. Why is that little thing in my way? Because I'm doing sum product, that's why. Areas, I'm just going to take this and replace it manually with C:C, so that it knows to look, or sorry, D:D, other column, the next column over, D:D. I can't see it because Excel's giving me my little heads-up display here telling me what it is I'm dealing with. And I can have as many of these arrays in there as I want to, and each one of these is going to be a value that's going to get multiplied by the next value in line. So whatever is returned here is going to get multiplied with this, is going to get multiplied with this, is going to get multiplied with this, and I can keep going as far as I want to go. In this case, I'm only going to do 2 conditions. I'm going to do, is it a workstation plan, and does the D column here, whatever row it finds inside of there, happen to equal the value that I'm going to have over here on my support staff summaries first row. Actually, it's going to be number 3, not C5, but C3. And I don't want to necessarily have the entire tab name in the mix. I just want to have C3. So I'm going to put a close parenthesis there, close this off, and hit enter. What you're going to see is it's going to come back with a 9. Now, why is it getting 9? Okay, so it finds the row here, workstation plan. If it says workstation plan in that entire column for each row that it finds, it'll return a 1. Then it looks on the next area and it says, okay, what is the name of the actual, the D column? Does it match hotel? And if it does, it returns a 1 again. So what it's doing is it's summing up here. It takes this value and it multiplies it by this value. 1 times 1 is 1. So it stores that for the first row that it finds. So in like row 3, for example, it finds 1. Great. So 1 and 1, it multiplies them together, gets 1. That's great. It stores that. Then it goes to the next row, row 4, and it checks it again. And if this is 1 and this is 1, it multiplies them together, gives me 1 again, and it sums them. So now I've got 2. And then it goes to the next row, and it looks again. So if I do this manually over here in my Areas tab, I go, first of all, support space plan. First of all, let's get out of that. I don't want to be doing any more calculations here. Okay. Let's manually check for this and see if we get 9 as well. So let's use the same logic here. So I'm checking first of all to see in the first row if this equals workstation plan. Okay, so that if it equals workstation plan, I return a 1. In this case, it returns a 0 because this is not workstation plan. The next one over, it looks to see if it matches hotel. In this case, it doesn't. That's 0. 0 times 0 is 0. So the first row equals 0. The second row here, again, this is 0 because it doesn't equal workstation plan. It's also not a workstation, so it's still zeros. It does that all the way down here. These are all zeros. So for each row, it's storing 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0, so it's adding them all up. So far, when I get down to here, it's all 0. Here I get workstation plan is true. Yes, it's 1. It's a 1, so 1. But then the next one says, is it a hotel station? No, it's workstation. That's going to return 0. So 1 times 0 is still 0. So I'm taking all those previous zeros, adding them all up, still get 0, all the way down to here where it finds the first 1. This is the first time where they're both going to turn out to be 1s. It adds them, it multiplies them together, gives me a 1. And it adds 1 to the current stack of all the zeros, gives me 1. Then I'm going to get a 2 because, well, I'm going to get 1 and 1 times 1 is 1. Add that together to the previous row or previous sum. That's going to be 2, 3. Let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there are actually 9 entries of workstation plan and hotel in this list. So I'm getting a total count of 9 over here on this cell. Now all I have to do is take this and just auto-propagate this all the way down. And it doesn't have to worry about my cell references here because it's looking for column references. It's looking for an explicit name of workstation plan. The only time I have a cell reference is C3 right there. And as I propagate this down, I do want it to automatically update that. So I'm just going to drag this down and have it come back with an exact count for me of 27 total spaces or total workstations. And I'm getting a total count of each individual one that's looking over here in my Areas tab, pulling my quantity. That's method number 1. Method number 2, I'm going to take this exact same sum product here. I'm going to go down here to my next quantities. Oop, hang on. Hit escape there after copying that. Take my next quantities here and paste it right down here. So it's going to look for sort of the same kind of concept here. It says, is it a workstation plan? And does the name happen to match that previous name over there? Well, what I want to do now, instead of saying workstation plan, and not matching C11, what I want to match here actually is C16, by the way, 16, there we go. And I don't want, so I'm going to get 0 because nothing is automation room and workstation plan. The other value that I want to look up here is the one that's called support space plan. So let's start looking for those. So down here, support space, I will type that in right here in place of workstation. Support space plan. So what I'll do is I'll find out that these are all probably still mostly zeros. There might be a few that give me a quantity back. Yeah, I'm getting 2s and 1s out there, but the quantity here isn't what I'm looking for. Here what I want is the absolute square footage on these. So what I'm going to also do, I'm going to look for the support space plan first of all. I'm going to look to make sure that the area matches up the name over here. But then what I want to do is I also want to add in whatever the total area happens to be. So I'm going to add in column EE out there. So to do that, from here, I'm going to add in one more check. This time I don't want a 1 or a 0. This technique right here with the dash dash and then putting a condition inside of parenthesis, this returns a 1 or a 0, a true or a false. This condition is met, it's true, it's 1, or if it's not met, it's false. That's not what I want this time. What I want now is the actual value. So I'm going to go over here and just use the Areas tab and grab column E directly. So as I do that now, it's going to take, if it finds the support space plan, first of all, that'll give me a 1. If it finds the name that matches up over here, it gives me another 1. 1 times 1 is still 1. Then it looks up that correlating row's area, if that all matches up, and it gives me back the area, and it multiplies that by 1, which gives me the area. So it's actually going to take, and for each of those individual rows, if the name is support space plan and the name happens to match over here, it gives me with the actual areas and sums them all together. So let's see what that does if I drag this down my list. If I start dragging this down for this 2 right here, it'll take my 2 extra large conference rooms, and it'll give me a total area back for whatever those extra large conference rooms are set up as. Let's see if it's kind of close here. So if I go here to my list, I should be looking in my support space plans. I have 2 extra large conference rooms, 3825 for my first square footage, 3793 for my second square footage. I don't have any other extra larges out there. If I want to do this manually, I could do something like equals this plus this, just to double check it. Yep, 7618. So it does have the right value out there for what it's coming up with over here, 7618. So I can actually just drag this all the way down my list now. And what it'll do is continue to search through all those individual rows as it's doing this and continue my math process. So in my Revit project, as long as I'm making it in the right space plan, that is a support space plan or a workstation space plan, and as long as it has the right name, it'll either do a count properly or it'll quantify my total square footage, and then I can actually use my program column over here to validate how much I am over or under what my program square footage happens to be. All right, so far we're good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, at this point, take and save this spreadsheet exactly as it is so I can retain the fact that I've just put these formulas in there. I'll save this. I'm going to go over to my Areas tab, and I'm going to clear out all of these areas so that my template doesn't have any particular project information out here already. I don't want any specific project data in this list. So what I'm going to do is unlock this. There's actually a way to unlock your spreadsheets. If I try to delete one of these rows out here right now, if I click clear contents or delete, it tells me that this is protected. Normally when you export information out of Spreadsheet Link, a lot of the information, especially the first 2 columns, are protected, and you should never touch those first 2 columns if you actually expect to get information back into Revit. In this case, I'm trying to create a template file here. So what I'm going to do is unprotect my sheet, type in the secret password. If you want to know what the secret password is, read the help documentation. It'll tell you exactly what the default password is. I'm not going to let you cheat right now and just get it from me. So read the help documentation. I'm going to delete all these rows of information down here. That's okay, actually. It's not going to break any of my math because all of my math is column-based. There's no row references here on any of these formulas. It's all going on column-based. Only row references are coming out of this spreadsheet, this particular worksheet right here. So I can do that. I can delete all those rows of information. I'm also going to take this area here where number 4 is, and I'm going to clear the contents of these cells. That's going to make it completely blank. There's no reference to any specific element out there. All I have is my basic header data up here, the actual column references, so I can see what that is, and 1 row of blank data. Personal preference, that's how I like to have it set up. So I'm going to go ahead and save my current planning summary template here. Now, at this point, what I can do is I can actually run this against my project and see if it pulls this information properly in an automated fashion. So let's find out. I'm going to close down this Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to close down Spreadsheet Link. I'm not going to save my changes beforehand because I've already done so. I'm going to open Spreadsheet Link back up again, and let's load these settings from a file. I've already got my export set up. All it has to do is pull the right spreadsheet. So as long as it does that when I load up this Spreadsheet Link Express number 2 right there, when I click open, it should open this all up right away, should extract my areas out here. It's taking a second to go ahead and do that. It is going to ask me a question here telling me it's found the same worksheet and if I want to overwrite it, and the answer is yes, I do. So now as I've done that, it's got the exact same extraction of information out here. If I go over here to my Staff and Support Summaries single tab, why is it not clicking over there? There we go. It took it a second to figure this out, probably because it was crunching the numbers over here. As it's doing that, it's going through and giving me the exact same counts, same 27 spaces, same actual extra large, conference room space out there. All this information is the same, so it's good to go. So now, how do I use this? How does a designer go through the exercise of leveraging this? So what I would do is this. I'm going to close this down, give this off to a designer, and let them actually do some number crunching. So they're going to take this file. They're going to go off with a client someplace. Let me pull this on the screen here. They're going to go off with a client. They're going to take, that's the wrong calculation set here. Let's do my planning summary. They're going to take this template off with them and go make changes to it. Now I'm going to make a copy of this just in case they happen to overwrite mine when they come back to the office. But this is the one that my Spreadsheet Link process here, my settings file, is actually calling for. So they're going to have to overwrite this. So I'm definitely going to make sure I have a copy or an XL TX file or whatever, so I can have an actual template file that they can use. But they're going to have to overwrite this to run this process when they come back, unless I want to make individual settings files on a project-by-project basis. that absolutely works. In fact, there's sometimes I'll do that to make sure that my resulting file, instead of being saved in a default network drive out here, it gets actually saved to a specific project folder. So I might actually make my settings file on a project by project basis. Maybe I don't even save the settings file out to an external file. Maybe I just save it in Spreadsheet Link with the advanced settings directly to my project file. That's a possibility as well. But either way, they're going to go edit this file. They're going to go through the workflow here on the support summaries single level project here and go through the program tab and say, okay, hoteling stations, how many do I want? I want to have 12 of those in my project. How many actual workstations? I want to have, you know, maybe 14 of these. I want to have maybe 2 of these offices. This is actually office number 2, by the way. I failed to update that name. So I want to have 2 of those. I want to have 4 of these basic offices. Maybe I want to have 3 of these. And they're just kind of sitting down with the client figuring out how many of these they want. Now, obviously, they're way under their count right now because they haven't actually run the design validation yet, but they're figuring out what they need. How many manager workstations? I want 6 of those. So they can go through that exercise and they can fill that all out. As far as the actual square footage of the individual spaces, I can go down here to something like the workforce management space and say, I'm expecting to have, as far as workforce management, maybe office area, I want to have, I don't know, 1,200 square foot. And for the reception area out here, where was the reception? It's in the R's if I read. There we go. Reception over here, maybe I want to have 2,400 square feet, right? So I can put in whatever my numbers are that I expect to have for each of these areas and do some basic preliminary planning. And this might be a more simplified worksheet than what you're used to, but you can go through the exercise of filling these values out. How much square footage for my extra large conference rooms do I want? I want to have 3,000 square foot of conference space in the certain, you know, across the entire building, perhaps the entire level 1. Maybe for my medium office space, I want to have 2,000 square foot of total conference space there. For my small conferences, maybe 1,000 square foot of those, or maybe 4,000 square foot. There's going to be a lot of small conference rooms out there. I can put a lot of individual small conferences. Total square footage, 4,000. Right? So I can fill this out. I can save this. This is what the designer or the program developer is going to put together. Then when I go into Revit specifically, and I go to, I'm going to use Spreadsheet Link Express for this workflow, and I'm going to have open here my planning results, so that when somebody comes back to the office with this and they want to actually just basically run this against their design after the design's been done, validate what's going on, I'm going to use Spreadsheet Link Express. So I don't have to actually see the interface at all. So I'm going to use my planning results, Spreadsheet Link Express number 2 right here, apply my settings. It's going to go through the exercise of basically running data extraction. It's not going to change anything, so nothing's going to get imported. In fact, it's going to tell me that as well. Nothing got imported. It's actually building up that file right here. It's not filled out yet. It's doing the actual pulling of the data. It's filling it out. Ultimately, if I keep refreshing this here, there we go, refresh. There's 26K in file size. But over here, it says nothing is imported. That's because there's multiple tabs at the bottom. If I actually want something to import, I have to use the import underscore name as a prefix to a tab, giving it the proper category. So nothing came back in. That's okay. I didn't want anything to come back in. All I wanted was my data to get extracted, which is what happened out here. This information got kicked out to a spreadsheet, and it named it based on my project and based on my Spreadsheet Link settings file. So it uses the full name of my Revit project file up here, including my local copy name. And then it took the settings file name out there, hyphened them together, gave me the full file name here for my Excel file. So it saved it out to whatever folder I was expecting. So now I've got this design information in here, and I'm starting to see my variance results. I'm seeing that I'm under the programmed quantity of hotel stations by 3. I'm over my staff support workstations by 1. I wasn't supposed to have any, actually. So I can go through and start seeing my design validation auto-extracted from Revit based on areas, the area object, giving me a count of how many, or giving me a square footage. So you can go either way. It's up to you. You can choose which way you want to go on this. Either one is viable. I could have gone another level here on my areas and told it to pull the actual level my area was associated to. And then I could have used this multi-level configuration here where I've got first floor, second floor, third floor, fifth floor options, getting floor by floor totals, getting totals across the entire project, again, using areas or using counts. Either way works. Same concept. You're doing one more check on this formula here where I would basically say minus minus, open parenthesis, does my levels column equal level 1 or level 2 or level 3 or whatever, and then also check everything else, and then what it would do is add that in the mix. If it's not the right level, it doesn't actually give me the right product because it would be a 0. zeroes out the entire row. If anything in this row is a 0 when it multiplies, the whole entire row sums as a 0. So that's kind of how that little workflow works there. All right, so we've got this thing saved. Now I want to bring this back into Revit. This particular worksheet here has some information that I want to bring into Revit, but it also has some information over here to the right that I don't want to bring into Revit, a bunch of garbage out here. So in Schedule Excel, the next tool that I'm going to be using, I want to bring this, all of this, including this little first area over here, all of this is going to get brought back into Revit and placed on a sheet someplace. Well, that's great. I can do that. But I only want this little bit here. So you need to make sure you go to page layout if you only want to bring in a specific portion of your spreadsheets to kind of crop out everything else. Highlight everything that you want to bring in, go to your print area and use the set print area option on your sheet. So you have to have a print area set. If you don't, it's going to bring in everything it finds, the extent of all of the data. Same thing over here. I've already set a print area here, so it's going to use all of this as my print area. That goes all the way to the bottom of what I actually want to include. So I've done print area, set print area already. That's already been done. I don't have to save this. It's already been taken care of in my template file. That was something I did ahead of time. So what I can do now, I didn't make any changes here. I'm just going to leave it as it is. This file here is going to get linked in to my Revit project. That one tab is going to get brought in using Schedule Excel. Now, when I bring that one tab in, the next time somebody reruns data validation, if there's more hoteling stations out here, I can go back to Schedule Excel and simply re-update this, no problem. Or as I open up my project, it'll automatically update, because that's how Schedule Excel happens to work. So let's go through the exercise of bringing that in. If I go here to Schedule Excel, I'm going to add in, open up that particular spreadsheet. So let's go to planning results. Here's my planning results right here using the, again, the file name from my project and using the settings file from my Schedule Excel or my spreadsheet link workflow. Grab that file, open it up. It's going to give me the 3 tabs that I've got out here. Here's my areas, here's my summaries for my multi-floor, and here's my single floor summaries. And this is the one that I want, is my single floor summaries. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK on this. That's going to bring in this one schedule, and I'm going to show you now the one limitation that Revit apparently has when we build up this schedule inside of here. In my spreadsheet, this one value over here was rotated 90 degrees. And apparently, inside of Revit schedules, we can't rotate text. So you might want to be a little bit careful about having vertical or angled text inside, because Spreadsheet Link, or rather Schedule Excel here, cannot recreate rotated text at this time. I'm going to look into it, see if we can find a good resolution for that. But for now, it doesn't do rotated text. So this looks a little goofy. But everything else out here is giving me the results right back from whatever I did inside of Excel. So at this point, if I rerun my analysis, I can get this to re-update inside of Revit. Let's do an example of that. If I go over here to my area D, if I want to have a couple of workstations placed out here, I have no idea which ones these are. So I'm going to go ahead and copy them around just because I don't know what they are. I'll drop some here. I'll copy this around, drop some down here. I'm going to take these two, whatever they are. Don't know which groups they are. I'm going to swap them out for office spaces. They'll get much larger, change their sizes, no big deal. I'm going to move them around a little bit so that they're not overlapping, so I get actual areas out there. I'll take this guy here and move this workstation off this direction. Let's make this a hotel station. I'm going to try and get the quantities of hotels that I need. I was under by 3, so I'm going to go ahead and make 3 more hoteling stations out here. We'll copy this guy. Doesn't really matter where I put it. The whole point is that I can quantify the fact that it exists. I'm going to take these 2 and copy them one more time. Copy. We'll put them over here in this little space, and I'm going to make those, we'll make those some more enhanced workstations. I don't think I had those in my list at all. So I have some more enhanced workstations here. Let's go take a look at what those numbers currently look like. Right now, my enhanced workstation is number 3. I've got 1 office space, 2 office spaces, 2s. So I've got some basic numbers here. What I'm going to do is start by going to my Revit Express tools, run my Spreadsheet Link Express workflow, load up my settings from that planning summary folder for my settings number 2 here, and just apply them. So the process here is it's going to re-extract that spreadsheet. That's going to get kicked out. wait for it, takes it a second. It's got to extract all this information and run the calculations and save the spreadsheet. So it sometimes takes a little bit here. No worksheet was imported. That's okay. I didn't want it to be. So nothing got changed inside of Revit. Now, keep an eye on these numbers right here. I'm going to re-update from Schedule Excel. This happens to be out of date because the outside spreadsheet had been modified. So I'm going to update it. As I update this, it's going to rerun the numbers here. It's going to pull the new information in. This should be 12 with a 0 variance. Everything else out there is going to run its calculations as it's expected to and give me some new totals out here. There we go, updated information. So in a matter of 45 minutes, we went through while talking about it and figured out how to take data from Revit, export it out, get quantities or total square footage on a space or an area by area basis. And we also formatted a spreadsheet that was provided either by a client or by whomever, by internal formatting, and brought that right back into Revit with the results. So you can see here, we've got some pretty significant power that you can do for some design validation. And this can be used for a lot of different workflows. I can use this electrically, mechanically, obviously architecturally in this example. There's a lot of ways this can be leveraged. There was a question that just popped in a second ago that said, if you had conditional formatting to highlight some variance in this program summary, perhaps would that be maintained? And the answer is yes. Now, it wouldn't necessarily show inside a spreadsheet link directly because it doesn't calculate out those conditional formats. But when you open up inside Excel, because this is just an XLS file, any conditional formatting would definitely take effect there and would show up in the Excel spreadsheet, which would then also obviously update inside of Schedule Excel so that my conditional formatting could show up here. If I have a variance of greater than 1 or whatever, then it could highlight these cells over here. Yeah, I can definitely use conditional formatting. I didn't turn that on here. That'd be a very interesting exercise sometime soon here, but you could definitely leverage that. I've used that before on other examples. Obviously, colors come through, so I can background infill cells like this cell over here. It would just be up to me to make sure that that I've got those conditional formats put in place properly. And since this tab here isn't actually doing any changing, I don't have to worry about propagating extra conditional formats on additional rows that would show up here because these rows are pretty fixed based on how this particular spreadsheet is set up.